Former Minnesota police officer Kim Potter has been released from prison after serving time for the fatal shooting of Daunte Wright, a 20-year-old unarmed black man, during a 2021 traffic stop near Minneapolis. Wright was pulled over for having expired tags and for a hanging air freshener. Potter says she mistook her gun for a taser and served 16 months of a 2-year sentence in the fatal shooting.
The city of Brooklyn Center agreed to pay $3.25 million in a settlement to the family of Daunte Wright in June of 2022. The Wright family said the payment still has not been distributed due to other unrelated legal disputes, but they are hopeful to receive payment in the next 90 days.
So there was a lot going on in this very unfortunate incident. So he was pulled over. They then ran his information, and there were good reasons to continue with the engagement because he had an outstanding arrest warrant. He had a protective order against him from an unnamed woman. He did not have a driver's license or a proof of insurance card. His outstanding warrant was for failing to appear in court relating to carrying a weapon without a permit. So they proceeded to arrest him with cause. Then, there was a little bit of a struggle, and Potter says she was reaching for her taser, but she pulled her gun out instead and shot him. Then there was a car crash because he was still in control of the car, and he died. It was very bad. Her reaction, if you watch the video, does very much support the contention that she did not mean to shoot him, that she meant to use the taser. She, in fact, immediately reacts, "Oh my God, I shot him. What have I done?" kind of thing. I don't know how you feel about this. I think, look, obviously this woman should not work as a police officer ever again. What she did was very wrong. She served 14 months of a 2-year sentence. I think I understand the conviction. She killed him wrongly, and she didn't intend to. I would not say this is a case where this woman needs to spend the rest of her life or even a very, very long period in prison. If you think the purpose of prison is, to keep us safe, as long as she does not work she should not work as a police officer again. She should not carry a gun again. And then the public will be safe, is my thinking here.
Yeah, look, my inclination is not to have more incarceration and more people spending more time in prison. But it is frustrating, and people will note this, that over and over again, certain kinds of people don't have that same grace applied to them when they are sentenced to long sentences because they are perceived to be a threat, whether or not they are, and perceived to be perhaps more able to tolerate prison conditions than perhaps a young, dare I say, white woman. And that, even worse than that, there are certain kinds of people that don't even get the benefit of the criminal justice system, point blank period, because they end up getting killed extrajudicially, like Daunte Wright was in this scenario. So I do think there are things to talk about here, why it is that a taser and a gun can be confused, whether or not police in the course of these kind of traffic stops should be armed with guns in the first place. I know that seems like a remarkable statement, but in most countries in the world that have lower crime rates than ours, their police officers aren't armed in the least, and yet they manage to keep the peace. Part of this is an escalation. There's a literal arms race. If more Americans have guns, do more cops need to have guns? And we're inevitably going to end up in situations like this where innocent people are murdered, and people who did not intend to murder become murderers because we have poorly designed systems and tools that are not well suited for the kinds of jobs that they are being tasked with. And, I don't know what to do with that, but this is just a terrible situation all the way around. The video of the incident is galling. Her emotional response afterward is horrible. You can hear the grief and the regret and the shock and the pain. She says, "I'm going to jail. I can't believe I'm going to jail." I mean, some of it, I think her sadness is obviously having killed someone. Some of it, I think, is thinking about what that means for her own future. But what we don't get to hear from, the person who doesn't get to speak, is the deceased, who's lying, dying, bleeding out in a car down the street, and he'll never get to live the rest of his life, a 20-year-old kid. And I don't want the vocalization from the woman who killed him, because she was able to make those vocalizations, to kind of take up disproportionate space that should belong to someone who was murdered. because of, I think, bad public policy.
Yeah. Being in law enforcement should be considered a responsibility.
Yeah.
And you work for the American citizens, the taxpayers, and it is an awesome responsibility. And if you show you are not cut out for it, as this person did, then you are not cut out for it. We have covered, I recall at least a few other cases of the so-called, the kind of wrongful taser. There was a case I remember from college. Do you remember that? I can't remember the name of the individual involved, but there was someone, it was a pretty big case, and the police officer shot him when the police officer said he meant to taser him. So this is not the first time I've seen this. I don't know that it happens all that much, but if there's a easy fix to making sure that where the taser is and where the gun is, it's obvious so that police officers don't. Because look, it's a tense situation, and you or I might react very poorly in a tense situation, but they're supposed to have the training and the ability to handle the situation without escalating things to. I mean, she didn't intend to kill him. It's clear she didn't mean to do that.
It's worth noting that we covered this back in January, that there was the cousin of the Black Lives Matter organizer, Keenan Darnell, who died from the taser blast. Mm-hmm. So I mean, even
he died after being blasted with the taser. I don't know that it was definitively proved that was the cause of the.
Apparently 500 people have died from police use of tasers nationwide in the last 10 years or so. And, that's, you might say, a relatively small number over a 10-year period, but it does speak to the fact that even wielding that sort of a weapon, is not without risks and shouldn't be done willy-nilly. I mean, when you think about
beating people with billy clubs is carries significant risk as well. I mean, there's no matter what kind of weapon.
You shouldn't beat people with billy clubs either using disproportionate force. I think that the story in so many of these cases.
I'm saying the disproportionate force rather than the implemented.
In so many of these cases, the existence of certain kinds of tools, I think, is dictating police behavior. Whereas if they didn't have them, you can imagine different kinds of outcomes. So, for instance, part of the frustration, part of what was so tragic around the Tamir Rice shooting, where Tamir Rice was a child in a playground playing with a toy gun. The police drove up and within seconds had shot him dead. I think it was like 2 seconds since they were on the scene. And some of the criticism was that the car had driven up in proximity to the child, at which point they could then claim, I was close to someone with a gun, I was in danger, I had to shoot him. In a world where the police either didn't have guns or were behaving as though they didn't have guns, and you thought you were driving up on somebody who was armed, you would maybe keep your distance, park your car and come out on the side of your car using your car as a barrier and start a conversation with the person, drop your weapon, what's going on here? At which point you can imagine the 12-year-old says, hi, I'm a 12-year-old and this is a toy gun, and that 12-year-old would be an adult today living a productive life. So I do think that we should have a conversation about how the existence of these tools are adding to the police perception of them being invincible or empowered in ways that actually escalate situations and create more danger for themselves and then in turn for the suspect. Because they know that they have like the gun as the last resort or the taser even as the last resort.
The taser is intended to stun the person. If you're firing a gun, you're trying to kill the person. There's no, that's just from the movies, the shoot him in the leg, shoot him in the arm. That doesn't exist. If there's no police are, no one other than superheroes or something, secret agents can reliably shoot someone without doing them serious harm. So if you're shooting, you are shooting to kill. That's the training. Even Joe Biden said that once about some national gun incident in a speech a few years ago, and he was like, "Yeah, why don't they just try to shoot him in the leg?" They don't do that. They can't do that.
That was just in January too. Wow, what a long year.
Was this January?
Yeah.
It's an idiotic comment. It doesn't correspond to reality at all. If they're firing their gun, they are trying to kill the person.
Yeah.
And then once they're neutralized, maybe you can provide first aid. You can get the ambulance services. Maybe the person survives. But if they're firing, they're firing to neutralize.
Oh, he said it multiple times.
Yeah, somebody's gotta have him take that, drop that talking point.
Well.
It is not
wrong,
accurate. It is very wrong. More Rising right after this.